The Superchargers.
The Superchargers National Championship and unique motorsports events is brought to you by your neighborhood True Value hardware stores. The more you've got to do, the more you need True Value. By today's Head & Shoulders for dandruff care that's good for your hair. And by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
It's the 16th running of the prestigious Budweiser NHRA Summernationals. The best funny cars in the world are here, driven by the very best. Kenny Bernstein, John Brute Force, and the reigning world champion, Mark Oswald. All in cars capable of 250+ miles per hour. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Gabriel. And joining me on the broadcast today here on the Superchargers is Frank Hawley, the 1982 and 1983 funny car world champion. Nice to have you on the program.
It's great to be here, Jan. And you said the best in the world are here today, and I think one of them is Kenny Bernstein. He's the winningest driver on the tour this year, and he's close to his NHRA World Championship.
The cars are colorful and very, very fast. And we're ready right now to take a look at the pairings.
Jan, for those who might not know, these racers have been here qualifying for the last 3 days, and the 16 quickest drivers began the first round of eliminations earlier today. These drivers you'll see now have won their first round of competition and are preparing for battle in the quarterfinals.
All right, quarterfinals on the line. John Force and Jim Head. Two strong cars, Frank Hawley.
Jim Head has been an upstart in the last couple of years, an unsponsored car, spending his own money, a group of guys from Ohio, and they're winning races.
All right, let's take a look at these quarterfinals. It is John Force and Jim Head. Then coming out will be Tim Gross and John Collins. What do you know about these two?
Well, Tim Gross, I've raced with him for years, and he has a new sponsorship and has been running very, very fast.
And John Collins?
John Collins come back from a tremendous crash in the Cajun Nationals a few years ago, and he's also on top of things.
All right, let's take a look at the second half. Kenny Bernstein. Needless to say, he's fast qualifier. He's the guy to beat. He's the class of the field. Dale Pooley.
Dale Pooley, the best year he's ever had. Without question, he's one of the fastest cars on the tour, and he could be the guy to stop Kenny Bernstein.
Talk about fast, Rick Johnson.
The fastest driver ever in history, and he's going to race the reigning world champion, Mark Oswald.
Joining us on the telecast today is veteran network and Diamond P announcer Steve Evans.
Thank you, Jan. You know, Kenny Bernstein's record-shattering 5.62 in qualifying was especially sweet because 1 week ago today, the Budweiser King was a smoldering pile of rubble at the end of a Michigan drag strip. It's been a long week for you and your crew.
Oh, it sure has, Steve. We had tremendous problems at Milan, Michigan. As you said, we exploded an engine, which put the rods out, kicked the blower off. The worst thing that in the fear of all funny car drivers was a fire which destroyed our carbon fiber body. So Dale and the crew really had a tough week to get prepared for this Englishtown race.
Hot and brutally humid. Conditions overall?
Well, conditions is, as you said, hot and brutally humid, which makes it very difficult for these cars to run fast. And it also plays havoc on the racetrack because the hotter it gets, the more rubber and oil comes up, as you know, and it starts to ball up, and it's tougher to get traction, and you have the cars shake more. It's more difficult to run quickly.
Let's hope it's all in one piece when this one's over.
I sure hope so. We don't need another week like last.
Jan?
Kenny Bernstein says that the heat of the day can actually deteriorate the racetrack.
That's right. That rubber can roll up, and it's just like racing on marbles.
Jim Head and John Force, they're up next. Jim Head trying to figure out how to go as fast as John Force.
Well, normally what we do is just simply go up and make them beat us. In other words, we'll try to run the same ET, maybe just a little quicker than we ran the time before. But to try to step up a tenth of a second between rounds is almost impossible, and we don't try to do it.
Jan, we won 2 world championships with that philosophy. Run your own race and let the competition try and beat you.
Earlier, we asked John Force about his car.
It's starting to get consistency, and that's what it takes. Whether a car runs a 70 or runs 80s, if it'll have consistency to beat these guys. And we run this track a lot this year, 4 or 5. Run every match race they've had here, won them all, and maybe this could be our day.
Frank Hawley, John Force has certainly done his homework at this racetrack.
He sure has, and he's got a new crew chief this year, Austin Coyle. Austin Coyle was my crew chief when I won those 2 NHRA World Championships, and I think that he's going to be the difference for John Force this year.
All right, let's watch him on the line right now. Force in the far lane. That's lane number 1. Jim Head here on the near side, and it's Force at the midway point. John Force, and Force takes it across on the top end with an ET of 584 and a speed of 248.75 miles per hour. Good run for John Force.
Good run for John Force, and a disappointing loss for Jim Head. He fell off to a 6.19 second run, and I'm sure that he's not very happy with that.
2 cars firing up on the line now as we continue in the quarterfinals here at the NHRA Summer Nationals. Tim Gross and John Collins will now have at it. Here's Tim Gross, his burnout.
The burnout's very important in these cars. You heat the tires and put that hot, sticky rubber on the ground in order that you can launch the car from the starting line.
And you'll notice, too, when you back the car up now to get it set and get it ready to stage, you back right up along that same line. Right now, here's Steve Evans with John Force, who's going into the semi. Steve?
Well, John Force gets 1 round closer to winning the Summer Nationals, a 584, John.
Well, it dropped off a little bit there, Steve, and Coyle had tried something, thinking we still had an edge on him. And maybe we went the wrong way to get her back into a 70. We got to go back to where we were, but we're looking pretty good.
John sounds confident. Look at the drivers have opened the escape hatches on the bodies to let the smoke out of the car after the burnout. Because of aerodynamics, the cars this year have side windows on them, and that keeps the smoke inside the body. Jan?
Tim Gross told us earlier that there's some lane differences.
I believe there is, yeah. There's normally been a condition in the right lane a couple hundred feet out shortly after the concrete pad where there's a transition to the asphalt. A lot of people seem to break the tires loose and go through a severe shake. There also is that does occur in the left lane, but not nearly as often as it does in the right lane.
The right lane can be a problem here at Englishtown, but not for every car and not for every driver.
John Collins will be in the right lane this time. He had problems in the first round.
It appeared that the fuel pump had lost pressure on that run. So mainly we'll change fuel pumps, and hopefully that'll pick up the horsepower, get the car to not shake the tires when it leaves the starting line. That should improve the elapsed time.
John Collins ready to go as water comes belching out of the header pipes. Not unusual, though.
No, these cars don't have a cooling system or radiator. They just have the water that's in the block, and they run a small tube down into that front header pipe, and it just throws it out with the exhaust. Timing's really important here. You can't let that engine get too hot or the tires too cold.
They're away, and it's Collins who gets off a little early, but now on the far side, it's Tim Gross, and Gross is going to pick it up on the top end with a 582 ET, 240 miles per hour.
He betters his elapsed time in the first round and a very, very nice win. Tim was saying he didn't like that right lane, and he got out of it and put a 582 down.
Firing up on the line now, it's Kenny Bernstein and Dale Poldy.
This could be the best race of the event. Bernstein's low qualifier, and Poldy's been awesome all season.
Now, let's go down to Steve Evans with Tim Gross.
It sounded like you had to get on and off the throttle on the way down the racetrack.
Yeah, I certainly did, Steve. Like we were talking about a minute ago, at that transition point from the concrete to the asphalt, it definitely spun the tires, so I had to pedal it because it did start shaking violently on me. As you can tell, the way I'm stuttering.
That shake is physically painful.
It is, extremely. In fact, I just pulled my mouth guard out. I wear a special back brace, and it's like, you know, running head-on into a middle linebacker or something.
Jan, Tim thought his tire shake problems were gone when he got out of that right lane. He ran in the left, and it still shook, which just proves that the grass is not always greener on the other side.
Here's Kenny Bernstein now. He'll be running in that right lane. He had problems running only on 7 cylinders in the first round. We asked him if he had his work cut out for him.
Well, we do. Obviously, you can't run on 7 cylinders and expect to win in any game, and certainly not today. But Dale will get it figured out, and he'll make the number 1 cylinder we're having some trouble with come to life, and then the car will hopefully be back to normal.
Frank Hawley, when you've got a problem with 1 cylinder, it can either be what, ignition or fuel?
That's right, Jan. You can have a weak spark to where it will not fire the fuel, or we run such tremendous volumes of fuel in these nitro engines that you'll just have too much fuel in there and it won't fire.
Here's Dale Poldy now. Hot car running really well this year. We asked him about running Bernstein, the fast qualifier. This is what he had to say.
Well, Kenny's a tough character, and I think he'll be a hard one to beat. And we're just going to go out there and try to repeat ourselves and maybe just go after it a little bit more and see if we can beat him. If he comes out and steps on his car like he should and run a 570, which he's capable of, we're going to probably try to go out and at least run what we did or a little bit better.
Dale Poldy doesn't sound too confident.
I wouldn't be too excited about racing Kenny Bernstein. He's the #1 qualifier.
Bernstein in the right lane, lane number 2. He's ready to go. They're on the line.
They're staged. Dale Pulley comes in second. They leave the starting line. Pulley smokes the tires, and he's out of control. Kenny Bernstein to an easy win.
And Bernstein wins it with a 585 and a speed of 246.84 miles per hour. So Kenny Bernstein moves into the semis, and Dale Pulley had some problems out there.
What happened, Jan, was they were running the front end light on the car. As it lifted the front wheels up, it hit the wheelie bars at the back, unloaded the rear tires. They lost traction, sent them off the side of the racetrack.
So Bernstein heads to the semifinals, and Steve Evans is with him right now.
Well, Kenny Bernstein, a great leave off the starting line. You had the advantage there. A nice 585 victory. However, John Force has lane choice by 100 in the semis.
Well, that's okay. I think the lanes are pretty equal right now. If there's only 100 difference in the two, and he ran the other lane, I think, a while ago. So we just need to step it up some more. Again, it's still plenty soft.
And it appears that maybe you found that gremlin that was exploding all those motors.
Well, I think so. I think Dale and the crew have found it the other night, like I said before, and hopefully we'll just pick it up a little bit more.
We need one more car and driver to move into the semifinals. It's either going to be Rick Johnson or Mark Oswald.
Mark Oswald's the reigning world champion, and last year they just destroyed the competition. This year, Mark's struggling to stay in the top 10. Rick Johnson's driven a dozen cars in his career, and Roland's had a dozen drivers, so it seems they're well suited for each other.
Mark Oswald in the Candies and Hughes funny car had some problems in the first round. They exploded an engine. I asked him how much damage.
It did quite a bit. You know, we won't be able to use that engine again. We'll have to replace it with another one. But you know, all the motors are the same. It shouldn't hurt us too bad.
Rick Johnson in the Roland Leon car. We asked him earlier if he was satisfied with the way the year was going so far.
It's been a really good year for us. The car's been running quicker and faster than ever before, and we've got the quickest and fastest time ever recorded at an NHRA race, and we're real happy with the thing this year.
Frank, you'd have to admit, these are probably two of the quickest drivers off the line.
I've raced both of them, and their reaction times are just phenomenal. But the mechanics can also have something to do with how quick these cars leave the starting line by adjusting the clutches.
Okay, let's watch these two now as they get set and ready. Johnson on the far side, Oswald on the inside. They get off good together.
It looks like Rick Johnson, and the world's quickest and fastest driver, wins another round of competition with a 5.83-second run. And Jan, if you look at the times turned in this round of competition, the semifinals are going to be very, very close.
Let's go to the shutoff area and Steve Evans.
Well, they were dead even off the starting line, but Rick Johnson there first at 583, Rick.
Nice run for the track. It's getting a little marginal out there in the middle with all the heat on it.
Level to improve, though.
Yeah, Roland's been doing real well with this thing. He'll step her up. Just watch him.
We'll be right back with more of the NHRA Summer Nationals from Englishtown, New Jersey, here on the Superchargers.
Days looking new and bright.
On the Superchargers with the semifinals of the Budweiser NHRA Summer Nationals. I'm Jan Gabriel along with two-time World Funny Car Champion Frank Hawley. We're here at Raceway Park just outside of Englishtown, New Jersey. And we're ready for those semi-rounds.
And Jan, what's really interesting here is that these four cars matched in the semifinals have just run within 4/100ths of a second of each other. And I can tell you that any one of these drivers could win this race today.
Here's John Brute Force now, getting ready to do his burnout. He's never won an NHRA National Championship event.
No, Jan, he hasn't. And he's been struggling for years. He's finally got the big sponsorship. He has Austin Coyle from the Chi-Town Hustler as his crew chief, and this might be the season for John.
Here's Kenny Bernstein ready to go now as we watch these two. Quick question. The cars this year, they seem a little longer, a little slicker.
They've changed the rules, Jan. They've allowed you to have more overhang, more body out the back, more body out the front. Allows them to be a little slipperier, like the rail-type dragsters. Kenny Bernstein's car, one of the swoopiest on the tour.
Two very fast, hot red automobiles ready to go here at Englishtown, New Jersey. In the near lane, it'll be Kenny Bernstein. On the far side, John Force, as they're in their final staging preparation. And they are ready to launch the 1,320 feet. Bernstein gets away good and clean.
And then John Force obviously has a problem. A very disappointing round for John. Something broke. Kenny Bernstein, the easy victor.
Bernstein improves his ET with a 5.76, a speed of 249.58 miles per hour. So Kenny Bernstein will go into the finals here at Englishtown.
And it's going to be one of these drivers, Tim Gross or Rick Johnson, to face Kenny Bernstein in the final.
Frank Hawley, quick question. Does the psychology change? Does the tempo change now as you get closer to the semis?
I think it does. Everyone wants to be in that final round, and they're really trying hard.
Here's Steve Evans now with Kenny Bernstein. Steve?
Well, just when the enemy thought maybe you were going to give them a break, you're right back in the mid-570s, Kenny, and clean and dry.
Well, it was good. You know, we've been sneaking up on it, as we said before in previous comments about last week and so on and so forth. And Dale Armstrong and their crew guys just have kept working at it and step a little at a time and not try to go over our heads. So it's nice to have it back where it should be.
Kenny Bernstein seems laid back, very relaxed.
Well, they've had some problems the last couple weeks, and Dale Armstrong and the crew have straightened it out. They've just set low ET in eliminations. The car's running fine. I think he should be confident.
Winner of this semi will face Kenny Bernstein. Rick Johnson on the far side in Roland Leong's car. Here's Tim Gross on the near side.
It's a close race. Tim has some tire shake, pulls around on the big end to defeat Rick Johnson with a 5.90 second run.
And a speed of 247.38 miles per hour. So Tim Gross goes to the finals with Kenny Bernstein. Right now, here is Steve Evans with Tim Gross. Steve?
Well, Tim Gross, who has had his car literally beaten him to his knees. His head hurts right now, as you can see, but this will make you feel better. You're in the final round.
I'm very pleased with that. I switched lanes purposely thinking I might be able to get through that transition we've been talking about all day. That time I put a little bit more horsepower in it, took a little clutch out of it, and that shook far harder than I'd anticipated. About knocked me out.
Frank Hawley, we're going to replay this run. Tell us a little bit about this tire shake.
What happens is as the car accelerates down the racetrack, it loses traction for a split second. You can see a little bit of tire smoke off Tim's rear tires. Then it hooks back up, then it spins the tires, then it hooks back up again at a very rapid rate, transmits that shake directly to the driver's head.
That's sort of like having your head screwed into a paint can shaker.
Good comparison, Jan.
Right now, let's go over to the pit area and Steve Evans. Steve?
Well, it's been a brutal day of drag racing, not only on the strip, but in the pit area as well. As you can probably tell by me, it's still in the mid-90s, humidity almost 90%. Behind me, you see one of the finalists, Tim Gross. Now, this operation, not quite as deluxe as Kenny Bernstein. Still a little pull-along trailer. They don't have all those spare parts or a half a dozen crew people to get this car ready. But that doesn't mean that Tim cannot win this drag race. He's a very talented driver, and believe me, they will lean on this engine, get everything out of it they possibly can when they go up against the Budweiser King. Kenny Bernstein, of course, was a drag racer, then turned businessman, founded a chain of restaurants that he sold for more than a couple of $1 million, and is now a professional drag racer. So some interesting contrast between the two. The one thing they both share, they are just superb drag racing athletes.
From Englishtown, New Jersey, let's take a moment and go to the classrooms of the drag racing school in Gainesville, Florida. Frank Hawley, tell us about this.
When I retired from active competition a year ago, Jan, I decided that it'd be great to have a training program to teach people what I'd learned in the 15 years of driving.
What if you've never raced a car before?
That's no problem. We take people off the street every day, and with our curriculum, we can in 3 days take you on the thrill ride of your life. It's a very step-by-step procedure that takes you from the classroom to garage area instruction, warm-up instruction. We have a special drive-around exercise, and at the end of the 3 days, most of the people are doing burnouts and driving just like a pro.
The drag racing school sounds like one of a kind.
It certainly is, Jan. It's the only place in the world where you can go learn how to drive a 200-mile-per-hour race car.
Talking about 200-mile-per-hour action, let's get back to the finals here at Englishtown, New Jersey. We are ready to go.
And both drivers are ready indeed. The crew chiefs have done their job, and it's up to the drivers.
Here's Kenny Bernstein ready to do his burnout. Bernstein is now in his 6th straight final. That's not bad.
That's great. The best I ever did was 3 in a row.
Now, Kenny Bernstein won 3 out of 6. Did you win your 3 out of 3?
I won 3 out of 3, so maybe that's somewhat compensation.
Here's an interesting statistic. These two cars are within 1/100th of a second of each other.
It ought to be an incredible final round.
Everybody pumped up and ready to go. Here's Tim Gross.
Tim Gross is 33 years old, and this will be his 3rd NHRA final round appearance, but he's never won a national event. His first final round appearance was against me in the 1982 Gator Nationals, which was my first victory. His last final round appearance was at the 84 Winter Nationals in Pomona, California. Jan?
Both cars just about ready to stage. Kenny Bernstein out of Dallas, Texas. He's 40 years old, looking for his 10th national win here this afternoon.
Jan, this is just too close to call when you consider the number of variables there is in fuel funny car racing and the fact that these two cars were 1/100th of a second apart during the race day. Anything can happen.
A fine line between these two automobiles. Let's watch them as they're underway, side by side.
It's an even race.
And they're glued together at the top end, but it's Kenny Bernstein by a tick of the watch with an ET of 5.77 and a speed of 249.58 miles per hour. And we'll be right back with more of the Summer Nationals here on the Superchargers. The Superchargers, and here with Kenny Bernstein, our NHRA Summer Nationals winner, is Steve Evans.
That was some kind of drag race, Kenny Bernstein.
Boy, it was the closest one I've ever been in. I didn't know if I won. I was waiting to see your white car, Steve, coming this way.
Well, I tell you, it took the electronic finish line judge to call that when you couldn't have done it with the naked eye, I don't think, at those speeds.
No, there was no question. I could see the front of his car out there. When you can see him, that's a bad sign. And I just said, well, I don't know. We just have to hope that this one snuck through on it. Hats off to Timmy. Did a heck of a job.
Kenny Bernstein is the funny car champion of the 16th annual Budweiser Summer Nationals, and no one deserved it more. Jan, it's been one incredible drag race.
We'd like to add our congratulations to Kenny Bernstein.
The points Kenny earned today gives him a comfortable lead in his quest for his first ever NHRA Winston World Championship.
And Frank Hawley, want to wish you the best of luck with the drag racing school down there in Gainesville, Florida.
Thanks, Jan. It's been great to be here.
Our thanks to Steve Evans. I'm Jan Gabriel. We'll see you next time on the Superchargers.
The Superchargers has been brought to you by your neighborhood True Value hardware stores. The more you've got to do, the more you need True Value. A promotional fee has been paid by Gold Eagle, makers of fine automotive products, including air and repair tire inflator, seals punctures so you won't be left flat, by Lava with pumice, powers extra dirty hands clean, and by Matchbox, makers of Matchbox motors, Matchbox car wash, and Matchbox cars. Matchbox, the automotive superstars.